Hello and welcome to the We're Not Experts History podcast. I'm James, and if you're looking for a deeply researched, meticulously fact-checked and genuinely illuminating historical analysis, you've come to the wrong place.
I thought you might say that.
We've got to be honest, it takes an insane amount of time and effort and actual research to be both educational and entertaining, and that's why we say ready bother.
Yeah, we thought we'd go for entertaining more. But yeah, sorry.
Yeah, we'll let you know when we start. So this episode is the second in our trilogy about the Industrial Revolution, which is presented by Sarah, who has interrupted me twice already. Hello, Sarah.
Hello, sorry about that. I got excited.
Right, yeah, really?
I'm sure you're going to interrupt me multiple times through this, so...
I'll make a point of it.
Yeah, anyway. You always do. Okay, Industrial Revolution. So, yes, as...
The quicker we get started, the quicker we can all get on with our lives.
Yeah, the quicker I can open the window, because it is hot. Yeah, so... As you were saying, this is part 2 of the trilogy. So in part 1, which you may want to listen to if you haven't already, we talked about life in Britain before the Industrial Revolution. So obviously I'm not going to go over all of that again because we already did a podcast on that. But it was very much farm, very farmy, very muddy, very beige. But we're now in the late 1700s, so powdered wigs are still in fashion, and nobody's invented the weekend yet. So this is quite a while ago. And
when did they play football?
Sorry, just when they got time, I guess. I don't think it would have been a weekend thing because the weekend didn't exist. But no. Sorry, I just had a sip of drink there just to fortify myself. Well, it's either that or I'll be coughing on stream. So I'm trying not to do that. But anyway, where are we? Okay, late 1700s. So we've still got powdered wigs, no weekends. Britain's still pretty much muddy fields and everything's handmade. But that was all about to change, and this didn't happen overnight. This happened, it wasn't one event that happened, it was kind of a series of things that happened over quite a long period of time. During this episode, I'm going to be talking about some of the most important and often quite fascinating developments that took place during this time. So we start out with industry and technology, and let's talk about the textile industry, because the whole thing really got going when inventors started tinkering with ways to make life easier and faster and more profitable, of course. And the first big spark, which kind of kicked everything off, was the invention of new machines for the textile industry in particular. So prior to machines taking over, making cloth, it was a slow home-based process, and it was called cottage industry. And cottage industry, for those of you that don't know, it's kind of like a small-scale manufacturing business, which would typically be run from home by an individual or a family. And it involved producing goods which were often quite labour intensive and personalised. So it would be things like basket weaving, matchstick making, pottery, all of those sorts of things. Lace making, that's another one. And it would have been done from home, and then it would have been sold locally or sometimes more broadly, but normally it would be quite local.
It's taken to market, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So it was very much everything handmade. And then we had a wave of inventions that kind of kicked off the whole factory frenzy. The first was the spinning jenny, and that was invented in 1764. And this allowed one person to spin several threads at once. Then we had the water frame that came along shortly afterwards. I think it was about 69 or something like that. and that actually, as its name implied, it used water power to spin even stronger thread. And then quite a little bit after that, we had the power loom. That was, I think that was about 1780, mid 1780s, 85 it might have been. That was bringing automated weaving into the mix. So suddenly what would normally take days for an individual to complete could be done in a matter of hours. So can you imagine the impact this would have had? Now the reaction...
The increase in productivity.
Say that again?
The increase in productivity.
Yes. Now the reaction was mixed, a bit like when self-service tills first made their appearance in Tesco. Although they did lead to increased productivity, like you said, and new job opportunities in factories, they did cause a lot of displacement and hardship for the hand spinners, because suddenly people, they've been basing their lives around these skills, and suddenly machines are doing it, and they're doing it a lot faster and a lot more efficiently than what they could do. So they were kind of forced to either adapt and continue working in a more industrial setting, i.e. a factory, or face unemployment. So not the best choice. So from that, the cotton industry absolutely rocketed. Britain was importing the raw cotton, and they would have spun it and wove it in the new mills, and the finished cloth would be sold around the globe. And places like Lancashire and Manchester, they were very much renowned for the cotton industry, and they just turned into massive, smoky, factory-filled powerhouses, and they were just churning out cotton like there was no tomorrow. So that was how the whole mill setup came into place, and from that. So that's going on. So a lot of this is all happening all at the same time. So while that's going on, we've got the steam engine, because when you think of the Industrial Revolution, you think steam power. Well, I do anyway. I'm sure a lot of people do. And the invention of the steam engine, it played a huge role in the revolution, but it didn't happen overnight. It would have been years and years of tinkering and explosions and all sorts going on. Now, the idea of steam power, it had been around for quite a while, longer than what you would think, actually. And if we, well, longer than I would think. Things really got moving, literally. So we're going back a little bit now. We're going back to sort of the early 1700s, and a guy called Thomas Newcomen, he built the first practical steam engine in 1712. Now, he was an English inventor, and he created, it was called the atmospheric engine, and he was an ironmonger. He was based in Dartmouth, and at the time they were using horsepower to pump water out of the Cornish tin mines. And this was what kind of what his invention was for, which, you know, is quite a noble cause, because who wants soggy coal? Nobody. But because obviously using horsepower was quite high in cost. I mean, you think horses, one horse costs an absolute fortune to feed. So can you imagine?
The same, yeah.
Yes. So with the help of his assistant, John Calley, I think his name was, he was a plumber. He experimented for more than 10 years before they came up with a steam pump. Now, there was a pump that had previously been invented by another inventor called Thomas Savery. I don't know if I'm saying his name right. And he had patented it. So because so Thomas basically improved on that design, and the two of them. So funnily enough, just they're both called Thomas. So Thomas Newcomb and Thomas Savary, they entered into partnership, and between them they produced the first Newcomen engine, and it was erected near Dudley Castle in Staffordshire in 1712. And it was, as I said, it was predominantly designed to pump water out of coal mines. But it was a bit of a clunker. It was a bit slow, it was a bit inefficient, and it guzzled coal like it was going out of fashion. So the faster they're getting the coal out of the mine, the faster this machine's guzzling it. So it's kind of like, what's the word? I forget the word. Contradictory? Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's not possible, is it? Yeah.
No.
To get more coal.
They're getting more coal, but they're having to burn more coal to get less soggy coal. So yeah, it kind of doesn't work. But it's a start. And then we get another guy, a Scottish guy this time, a James Watt. He was a Scottish engineer. And he thought, I can fix this. I can improve on this. So I won't go into all the science of it because I don't really understand it, but he, during the 1760s and 70s, he made key improvements, which made the engine more efficient. So it, instead of just being a coal mine helper, it became a power source for factories, trains and ships. So although James Watt didn't invent steam power, because steam power already existed, he did turbocharge it, and it pretty much powered the entire industrial revolution. I probably should have started out talking about steam because that was kind of like, but anyway, it's really hard to know in what order to discuss things because it was all happening at once, but steam was a big thing. Steam power was a huge thing. It was the driving force, yes. So anyway, so we have inventions for the cotton industry and we have steam. Now we move on to iron and steel. Yes, sorry, what was you going to ask something?
I was going to say there was another inventor whose name was Trevithick, and he'd built a steam engine. I think they were using it for pumping water out of a mine or something like that. They built it and got up to power, up to steam pressure, and they were so pleased they went off to the pub to celebrate, and while they were in the pub, the pressure got too much and he exploded and wiped out a few houses.
Oh.
And yeah, that's just a story I've heard probably on QI. That's where I get most of my information from.
Oh, well, that's a very interesting story, which I hadn't heard of, so thank you for sharing. Well, I kind of guess that when you start messing about with steam and high pressure, you're going to get explosions. Yeah. It's going to happen, it's inevitable. But going on to iron and steel production. So obviously the iron and steel was being produced already, but to produce iron and steel, you needed lots of charcoal, which I'm sure you know, but I will just say, just in case people don't know, charcoal is created by burning wood, burning trees.
Burning or heating?
Well, burning and yeah, chopping it up and yeah, not.
If you burn it, it breaks down. But I suppose Anyway,
you're getting too scientific. All right, it's Saturday and it's hot. Okay, let's not get too scientific.
I love a fact. Carry on.
Anyway, so I had to have another sip of drink just to calm myself down. But essentially, they were having to chop down entire forests just to smelt a few bits of metal. So it made it very expensive, very slow, and not great for the environment, as you can imagine. But then there was an innovation. So enter Abraham Darby. So he was a British ironmaster and a foundry man, and he was another key figure in the Industrial Revolution. And he actually discovered, I don't know how he discovered this, but he discovered you could use coke, not that sort of coke, but I'm not. This is a family-friendly podcast, okay? So I'm not going to go there. I was talking about Coca-Cola, but yeah, I was. Honestly, I was. But the Coke that I'm referring to in this instance is a type of fuel which is made from coal. So it meant that iron could be produced much cheaper, much faster, and in much larger amounts. So cue an iron explosion, the industrial kind, not the dangerous kind, although there probably were a few dangerous explosions, as you said earlier. I mean, that was steam related, but even so. So all of a sudden, iron is abundant, and iron was everywhere. So steam engines, factory buildings, bridges, railways. By the late 1700s and early 1800s, towns like Sheffield, as an example, they had foundries everywhere, and the iron industry just went crazy. Tons and tons of iron. So this had a knock-on effect with the coal mining industry, because suddenly coal is much more in demand, and it went from being something you just chucked on the fire to being almost like the rock star of the revolution. So as the steam engines are starting to puff into action, and we've got factories springing up, and Britain needs a lot of coal, lots and lots of coal. So mining become much harder. Mines got deeper. Health and safety still didn't exist, wouldn't exist for quite a while. I mean, they were sending kids as young as 5 down to the mines. They probably would have been doing this beforehand, but it would have got a lot more prominent when the coal mining industry blew up. But that said, thanks to coal, that is what pushed Britain into a new age. So even if it didn't do people's lungs much good, it was kind of for the greater good.
It's like a perfect storm. All these things happen at the same time. Thankfully, it's mostly down to the natural resources of this country. If we didn't have all this coal and the ability to find tin and iron, etc.,
exactly,
it would have happened somewhere else, probably.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Britain kick-started the revolution, and in other countries eventually did cotton on, and I'll talk about that more in the next episode. But yeah, like you say, if we didn't have those resources to start with and the means to get them, who knows? Like you say, the revolution would have happened at some stage, but it might not have been us that kicked it off. It could have come from somewhere else. And anyway, so yeah, coal. So coal was kind of a big deal. Now we go on to tool making and engineering. Now engineering didn't really exist. I mean, you would have had people that would have been classed as engineers. I say that in inverted commas, but it wasn't really recognised as a profession as such. But before the revolution as well, when you talk about tools were made by hand, one at a time, often by a skilled blacksmith or a craftsman. So it was very slow, very expensive. You know, it wasn't something you could do in a hurry. But during the Industrial Revolution, the motto became make it faster, make it better, and make 10 while you're at it. It was kind of like that. So thanks to the advances in iron and steel production, tool making went from handcrafted to high tech. Well, it would have been high tech for the 1800s. We'd laugh at it now, but then it was high tech. So stronger, sharper and more durable tools could be made in factories, not in forges. And then we had the real game changer, which was machine tools. And these were tools designed to make other tools, and machine parts. And you had a few pioneers, people like Henry Maudslay, I think that's pronounced, and Joseph Whitworth, and they developed things like the screw cutting lathe and standardised measurements, which prior to that didn't exist. People probably measured things by eye rather than having an actual measurement system. So that meant that machine parts could actually fit together, which was a miracle at the time. And suddenly people could build identical machines, engines and tools on a much larger scale. So yeah, serious tune-up to the tool making industry, and it moved things along from guesswork to actual precision, which you think you've got decent tools, it's gonna help build everything else. So yes.
And if something breaks, you can buy a replacement.
You can just replace it. Yeah, exactly. So transport is the next one. Transport revolution. So we had, because of everything that was happening with the steam and the iron, once steam engines got wheels, everything changed, and the railway age that took off in the 1830s, and that absolutely transformed travel, trade, and the national timetable, because suddenly people could get from Manchester to London, for example, in hours instead of days, and without saddle sores. Because prior to that, if you needed to get from Manchester to London, you had to ride there, or you had to take a carriage there. You went by horse, basically. I don't think you could walk. Well, you could, but it would take you a long time. You could probably do it. You like walking. Might take you a while.
Not that long.
Your knee might give out halfway. I don't think it'd cope.
Yeah, I can walk to the fridge and back. That's about it.
You walked to the cafe earlier. You managed that. Well,
yeah, that was strong.
But anyway. So yeah, that as I said, that was a game changer. It meant, as well as obviously making travel much easier for people, it meant fresher food, because food could be shipped from, when I say shipped, I mean put on the train. It meant fresher food, yes, because it could get to places a lot quicker post, and yeah, absolute game changer. I've said game changer about 3 or 4 times. I apologise.
Yeah. How long before someone could say, "I'm on the train"?
Yeah, they could ring on their mobile, couldn't they? And go, "I'm on the train. Signal's a bit crap." Oh no, they didn't have mobiles then. I forgot about that. Okay, that was going to come. That would
the revolution, is it?
No mobile phones. What is this? No internet. No TikTok. Even though I'm not on TikTok, it's.
Yeah.
Anyway, so railway wasn't the only mode of transport. It's the one that we all think of when you think of the Industrial Revolution. You think railways, trains, steam trains. But the actual motorways of the day were canals, which were kind of like the M25, just a bit wetter and slower, and pulled by horses. But
not that much like.
No, exactly. So obviously, because you've got factories popping up everywhere, goods needed moving, and things like coal, iron, cotton, all of that stuff. And people realised that lugging everything around by horse and cart wasn't going to cut it anymore. They didn't have, well, what they would have called roads. I mean, we say now, we complain about the state of our roads, like potholes and things, but they didn't really have roads then. They were just glorified muddy tracks. That was a road. So Britain turned to canals, and these were man-made waterways that allowed heavy items to float gracefully rather than being jolted about in a cart. Now, the first canal to be built was the built in the mid 1700s, going back a bit, and it was the Bridgewater Canal, and it was built to move coal from the Duke of Bridgewater's mines to Manchester. And it worked so well that suddenly everybody wanted a canal, because it was like, oh, this works, this is good, I like this. So then we have more engineers coming in. Engineers are really having their day during this time, and like I said before, engineering wasn't really a recognised profession prior to this. From here, it would very much be, because engineers are really showing their worth during all of this change. So we've got engineers like James Brindley and Thomas Telford, and they were kind of like celebrities of the age, and they designed locks, which so we're talking about canals. So I had to look this up because I had heard of all of these things, but I wasn't aware of what they did. So a lock is basically a water elevator for boats. So a canal, believe it or not, does go up and down. It's not like one straight, because the Earth's not flat, people, okay? The Earth does kind of go up and down. It's not like flat mode in Minecraft. There are bumps and humps and hills, and so when a canal goes up or down, the locks help the boats move up or down in stages. That's what a lock is. You've also got aqueducts. So these were kind of like bridges, but they were for boats. So they would carry the canal over valleys and rivers, and sometimes even roads, or what would pass as roads. Yes, but it's pretty clever. And then, of course, you've got your towpaths. Now, your towpaths, because boats then, the canal boats, would have been drawn by horses. So the towpaths would be what the horse would have walked along back in the day, pulling the boat by ropes. And that was how they moved things. And obviously now canals have since been replaced by trains and trucks, but they're still nice for a Sunday walk. I've had quite a few nice walks alongside a canal. But yes.
Thomas Telford. You've heard of the town of Telford? Yes. Well, it's a new town and it's named after him.
Oh, okay. That is a very interesting factoid. Thank you for that factoid. That's good.
Continue.
I will. So we're talking about transport still. So we've got trains, we've got canals. Now, people started then to look at the roads, or the lack of roads. And as I say, we complain today about our roads. But back then, Britain's roads were in an absolute shocking state. You couldn't even call them roads. They were bumpy, muddy, full of potholes, big enough you could lose your car in one. And if it rained, which, come on, we're in England, so it did rain a lot, still does. I wish it would rain now though, because it is very hot.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
But when it did rain, roads just turned into sticky swamps, and trying to transport yourself or your family or your pet chicken or your goods by road, it was like trying to navigate a very slow, soggy obstacle course. It wasn't fun. Anyway. So what changed? Well, we start to see the introduction of what were called turnpike trusts. Now, these were kind of like your early road improvement companies. So they took over sections of road and they charged people tolls to use them. And these were charged via toll gates or turnpikes, and the money was used to fix up the road. So for the first time, someone, or not just a person, but an organisation are taking responsibility for roads and making improvements. So as well as that, the methods used to build the roads in the first place were improved. And there was a guy called John Metcalfe, and he was actually blind, but he could still build roads, so legend. And he introduced the idea of proper drainage and solid foundations. And Thomas Telford, our friend that we mentioned earlier, his method was to use layers of large stones, and he made the roads slightly raised in the middle to allow the rainwater to run off, rather than just making a big mud soup in the middle. And another one, John McAdam. Now, he was the guy behind tarmac, and he created a technique using crushed stone, which was very tightly packed to form a hard, smooth surface. And that was your early tarmac.
Tarmac Adam.
John McAdam.
Tarmac Adam.
Yeah. Do you know, I was trying to work out, I was thinking, was it named after him? Then I'm looking at it thinking, no, I don't know, it doesn't make sense.
I know of the word Tarmac Adam, and I just believe Tarmac's a shortened version.
Yeah, it probably is. Anyway, so that was tarmac. So by the early 1800s, roads were much better, much smoother, more reliable, and they were open all year round. I guess prior to that, roads were very much kind of seasonal. If it was snowing or raining, certain roads probably would have been completely cut off.
Oh, that would have been passable because they were muddy, yeah.
Now, lastly, when we're talking about transport, we come to steamships. Now, ships already existed, obviously, but ships had sails and oars, and yeah, it was kind of very much dependent on if the wind was in a helpful mood or not, as to how quickly you got to your destination. But someone had the idea. Could have been one person, could have been multiple people. Why don't we stick a steam engine in a boat and see what happens? And it worked. Yes. So 1812, the Comet, that was one of the first successful steam-powered passenger boats. That was 1812. And in 1838, the SS Great Western, that was built by an Isambard Kingdom Brunel.
Yeah.
Thank you. Britain's ultimate overachiever. He built the first. Well, he probably didn't physically build it himself, but the SS Great Western. That was the first steamship to cross the Atlantic, and it did it faster than anything else had ever done. So you can imagine this led to faster travel, more cargo, and more global connections, because I nearly said a bad word. Steamships essentially shrunk the world, and suddenly trade with distant countries, it became quicker, cheaper, and far more predictable. So yeah, that again, another game changer. A lot of game changers are happening during this revolution.
Yeah. I'm still trying to work out what the game is.
Yeah, I still haven't worked it out now. Still don't know what's going on. Now, we had...
I shall do some work on the game later.
Yes. We had quite a few... obviously, I've mentioned a few. Obviously, the spinning jenny and all of those things. But we had a lot of inventions and innovations happening during this time. Now, one big one, which made a huge difference, was gaslighting. And that made it, that appeared in Britain in 1807 in London.
As early as that? I've never guessed that.
What, as early as that?
I would have thought it was later.
It probably became more common later, a bit like the internet. see, when you think, oh, when was the internet a thing? We always think of like the 90s because that is when we became familiar with it. But it would have been knocking around long before that.
Oh, it was,
It's just
what we think of as World Wide Web dates from the 80s, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Earlier, I think potentially it could have been the 70s.
It was invented by Tim Berners-Lee in the 80s.
All right. I want to check that
You
because
would have
I swear I read somewhere it was the 70s. Anyway,
there would have been other smaller networks which
Yes.
were forerunners. So I'll let you do the research and you can present that episode.
okay, I'll add that to my list. When was the internet invented?
There you go.
Anyway, I've got enough on my list. Thanks very much. But gaslighting. So London, and it was the streets of Pall Mall and Mall. Pall Mall. I was going to say Pall
It's either
Mall.
Pall Mall or Pall Mall.
Fine. Pall Mall. The streets of Pall Mall were lit up, not by moonlight or torches, by gas lamps. And these were coal gas lamps.
Okay. Now that starts to make sense now, yeah.
Yes. So for the first time, you could actually go out at night without tripping over a horse or bumping into a gentleman and thinking he was a lamppost or something.
Doing that.
Yes, so by the 1820s, so this was 1807, that was when the first street in London was lit up. By the 1820s, gaslighting was spreading, and it was spreading fast, and streets, factories, theatres, and homes, but probably the homes of the well-to-do, not your Joe Blogs, not your Joe Public. They were basically getting a blow up. So yeah, gaslighting, and yes, it hissed, it flickered, it probably smelt a bit like a chemistry set gone wrong, but it was a huge step up from candles and lanterns. I can't even imagine what it must have been like.
I'm wondering if people would have travelled of an evening specifically to see that.
Yeah, can you imagine? And even, I mean, again, it's something that I talk about more in the next episode, but you think if they've got the ability to light up factories, they can make people work longer hours because they're not dictated by when it gets dark. So there's that to consider.
Good point, yeah.
So that was one invention. We had a lot of mechanical inventions, which I've kind of touched on earlier, but we'll go back. So we've got obviously the spinning jenny and the power loom. We also had something called, I mean, there were so many, I'm not going to list every single thing that was invented because we'd be here all night, but a few key examples are the mechanical hammer that was used for forging iron, and it pretty much it could just smash things really hard,
yes,
and very quickly.
They used them. They use them to smash iron into really thin plate for shovels and things like that as well. There are still some that exist, but they can't use them because they're so big that they would shake the old buildings that are in them to pieces.
All right. Wow.
Yeah.
Another factoid. Thank you, Mr. Basildon, for your factoid. We also had the lathe machine, which I did mention earlier, but I didn't kind of talk about what it actually was. But the lathe machine, that was a spinning tool, and that was used for shaping wood and metal. And that was very good for making precision parts. And in the farming world, because the farming world also had major changes going on, we had the seed drill, which was... it meant that seeds could be placed in rows instead of, you know, when you see the women out in the fields with the baskets just sprinkling the seed, chucking the seed.
Yes, it's called broadcasting.
Yes. So rather than that chuck it and hope for the best method, they had this seed drill which would just do it neatly and rows, and that's why our cornfields look so neat nowadays. They wouldn't have looked like that before. It would have been a mess.
Yeah, but yeah, hit and miss, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You would have had like bare patches, and anyway. So that was just a few inventions. Now another industry that underwent massive change was the chemical industry. Now, chemicals had always been around, obviously. Chemicals didn't just spring up out of nowhere, but they had really only been something that alchemists and apothecaries fiddled with. They weren't a big business, but they were going to become a big business. Now, with the rise of factories and mass production and all these new materials, suddenly there was a huge demand for all sorts of substances to make things faster and cheaper and more colourful, because we all need a bit of colour in our lives, obviously. Now the first one was dyes. Now natural dyes like indigo and madder, they had been used for centuries. Now indigo and madder, they're natural and they are derived from plants. Indigo is known for its deep blue colour, and it was primarily used to dye fabrics like cotton, particularly in the production of like blue jeans and that sort of thing. And then madder is kind of like it yields a range of colours from sort of red to purple, and that was used in textile dyeing like wool and silk and cotton, particularly wool and silk and cotton. But they were expensive and they were quite tricky to produce. So chemists, because there was now such a demand, chemists actually got to work finding ways to make synthetic dyes. And that kicked off another revolution, a colour revolution. So now, even if you weren't super rich, you could wear clothes that weren't 50 Shades of Beige. You had choices, you had colours. Then we had bleaching. So traditionally, cloth had to be laid out in the sun to bleach it because there wasn't any other way to do it. And we're in England, so do we get sun? Yes, we do. Right now we do, but climate has obviously changed. Yeah. Climate has changed. Yeah. Again, that's something I talk about in the next episode. So, but back then, England was even more rainy than it is now. So, bleaching wasn't easy, and that is when chlorine-based bleach came along, and that could whiten fabric in a fraction of the time. So that was a big thing. And meanwhile, we've got the soap industry, and that boomed due to new chemical processes. And factories were just going crazy with all this chemical stuff, so they're churning out all sorts of things, acids and alkalis and everything that's essential for cleaning to glass making. But unfortunately they were a little bit careless, and lots of local rivers and air and people's lungs often paid the price for all these chemical goings on.
Sounds familiar.
Yes. But by the mid-1800s, Britain was home to a full-blown chemical industry, and that laid the groundwork for the modern pharmacy industry that we very much rely on today. So, and one important thing is, just to mention, talking of chemicals, Joseph Aspdin, I can't say his name. He was a British bricklayer, but he actually patented a chemical process for making Portland cement. and that was later used. So that made a huge advance in the building trade, because for the first time they didn't have to use cow dung to stick things together. They had cement, and that ended up being used when constructing the Thames Tunnel in later years, and the London sewer system, which in later years happened. So yeah, lots and lots of changes happening.
You also had with obviously with this one and your previous talk about farming, they discovered at some point in the Victorian era that you could add chemicals to land which would help improve your
soil
yields.
Yeah. That's a good one.
I should have might add ammonia or something to it.
Do you know what? And I did actually watch that in that programme, the one that we both like, Victorian Farm.
Victorian Farm. Yeah.
And I didn't even think to add that in. That's the thing. Well, so much has changed. It's impossible to, because it wasn't just one or two things, it was so much happening at once, so many changes, so many advances happening in a very, well, it happened over quite a long period, but when you think of how much changed, it was a relatively short space of time, really, if you think about it, to go from one extreme to the other. So it's really difficult to kind of touch on everything. I mean, if you talked about everything that happened, you'd be podcasting for a year.
It'd be a podcast on its own.
Yes, it would be. Yeah. But overall, the Industrial Revolution, it was a time of huge change. So we've got our steam engines, we've got cotton mills, we've got gas lighting. In the next episode, we talk about how that affected Britain's towns and cities, because there was huge expansion. We've obviously got the railways, ironworks, coal mines, a lot has changed in quite a short space of time, and it absolutely transformed the way people worked, travelled and lived. So in the next episode, just to keep you on the edge of your seat, leave you on a cliffhanger, we'll be talking about, well, I'll be talking about, and then James will just be occasionally butting in with his factoids. But we'll be talking about what this progress actually meant for the people of Britain, what changes actually happened. And don't get me wrong, the machines were amazing and absolutely life-changing, but they made a huge impact on everyday life. And yeah, we'll talk about that next time. I'll give you something to look forward to.
Yeah.
So that was Britain during the Industrial Revolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to end with one more factoid for you.
Go on.
So, going back to the start, when the cotton machines were being built and made, whichever one it was, I can't remember what it was called. One of the looms, and one on its own would be quite loud, but when you had a factory full of them, it was incredibly loud. So the women using them would go deaf, or
I can believe that.
Or they would have cloth ears.
Is that where that comes from?
That's where the term comes from.
Wow.
Cloth ears, yeah.
Nice.
There you go.
Nice. Well, another factoid from Mr. Basildon there. Thank you very much. But so that was, in a nutshell, that was the Industrial Revolution, or Britain during the Industrial Revolution. And stay tuned for the next one. But I'll let you do the outro because that's your job today.
You just because I was going to do it.
Go on then. Hurry up.
Thank you very much. Thank you for listening to the We're Not Experts History podcast. Please remember, we are professionals. We're just two amateur historians.
Two idiots.
With nothing better to do with our spare time.
We hope you enjoyed our little podcast. If you did, please leave us some positive feedback on whichever platform you listen to us on and share with your friends.